That's really annoying. Why didn't I have this plugin a few weeks ago? Hey guys, Sam here at NA Studios. Today I want to take a look at Slate Digital's new MOTT plugin. Now, when I first saw this, I saw that it was up for download, I saw the videos about it, and my initial reaction was, why? Why are you emulating a plugin that already exists, is already free, everyone already has access to? And I kind of looked at the previous Slate offerings where there was loads and loads of sample packs, there was murder melodies. I was thinking to myself, are they going down that EDM or hip-hop route, or is this stuff that we can actually genuinely use in any kind of music? Those of you who kind of keep up to date and chat with people on social media about Slate Digital will know that there's been kind of a shift in the way that people are looking at stuff. They're kind of saying what I've just said. Are they moving towards that EDM kind of movement? So I downloaded it, initially thinking it was just going to be like something for beats. And then I used it. And I turned on that advanced mode and I thought, wow, I was completely wrong. Let's take a look at it. Let's take a look at it on a metal track. Let's see how much use it actually is in a genre that you wouldn't specifically think of an OTT emulation being good for. Let's check it out. So let's take a look at this on drums to start off with, because drums are such an important part of a heavy rock and metal mix. They're going to be providing that punch. And this is something that OTT or MOTT is kind of famed for, and it's said that it adds all that punch without losing any of the clarity. So first off, we're met with the simple view, the easy view, like the classic OTT look. I'm not even going to bother with this. I'm going to go straight to my advanced settings where we've got a lot more here. Now we can control each band individually, the gain of each band by using the frequency display, just bringing the bars up here. And then we've got our upwards compression and downwards compression. Now what the hell is that? Downwards compression is what we would normally use for a compressor, so that's kind of bringing the peaks down in a simple way of explaining it. Upwards compression is a little bit different. It's kind of the opposite, but it's kind of the same as well. Let's take a look at a preset on here and just manipulate this a little bit more, because this is the great thing about the advanced section over the normal OTT. We can just manipulate absolutely everything in there. So let's go to a preset first. Let's go to drums and just take a look at Bus Platinum. That sounds like it might be quite cool. Let's have a listen to it in its initial state, and then we're going to tweak some stuff and kind of see how we can affect everything. So first off then, I'm going to take it off. I'm going to listen to just the drums in solo, hear how it sounds, and I'm going to put it on and we'll hear the difference. Interesting. So one of the first things that I'm noticing is this is version 1.0.0, whatever, the very first version. We've got some graphical issues here where stuff appears to be still compressing after I've stopped. Presumably that's going to go, but that's just a minor point. So downwards compression versus upwards compression. Well, downwards compression is our normal compression. Upwards compression, instead of dealing with the peaks, it's dealing with the stuff that isn't peaks. So that's the tail in the sense of drums. So if we look over on the left here, we've got controls to manipulate all of the bands at once. We can use the multi-band compression view where we go into each individual band, or we can do everything as one, which I think is quite handy to be able to do, especially when we want to hear the difference between the upwards compression and what else we can do with that band. Now, in this instance, we've got a ratio of 1:2. Which is unusual for a compressor because you'd normally have the larger number to the left and the smaller number to the right, which we have in our normal compressor. In this case, it's infinity, the largest number we can get. So what does it mean when we have 1:2? Well, that is essentially expansion, isn't it? Because with an upwards compressor, we would have a ratio with a large number on the left in the sense of this, or expansion. I think the best way to explain this is just to listen and see what it's actually doing. So let's start off by having it just at 1:1, and then we're going to apply the upwards compression. So we'll hear those tails kind of come up, and then we're going to do expansion. So we're going to hear the opposite. which is interesting. Let's do that now. Okay, so as we went into the expansion, we got far choppier and we got far more kind of attack on the transients. But then as we brought it up to the upwards compression, we got far more of a tail of the drums, which is interesting. And we can do that in a multi-band way. So this track, everything was recorded in the same room, this room to be exact. So we're going to have some spill there. We're going to have some bass guitar, which is kind of going to be in the tail of everything. So we don't necessarily want to bring that up, but we can do it on a band basis, on a per band basis. So let's look at expanding that low end a touch, and then we may need to bring the overall level up a bit just to compensate. Let's take a listen to the bottom end of these drums then. Nice, sounds good. So we've got a lot more punch there. I kind of feel like the mid-range is being amplified a bit too much though. And if I bring down this this control here from 5 dB to 0, I think that's going to resolve that. But it could also be the fact that we've got some upwards compression going on here, albeit at quite a low ratio. Let's bring that upwards compression down slightly and just hear what effect it's having. Yeah, so as we brought that upwards compression down, or rather when we brought it up, it got very, very aggressive, didn't it? With the cymbals, they sounded a bit clanky, a bit dustbin lid-like. But as we brought them down, yeah, it kind of smoothed it out a little bit. I think the best way to hear this is going to be in the mix. As we all know, when we're mixing, we shouldn't just solo stuff all the time. Let's take a listen to how it sounds in the mix with all the instruments there. We're going to bypass it first, and then we're going to bring it in and just see what the difference is.
Oh, it takes a man to know when something's done. I come to you like I'm the only one to come and go. Life is not a one-act show. It's not over till I'm done.
That's really annoying. Why didn't I have this plug-in a few weeks ago? That makes my drum mix sound naff in comparison. It makes it sound so good. It's adding loads of punch, but it's adding that airiness to it as well. It's adding that that sustain that we're getting from the drums. There's a lot of triggers on this drums using Slate Digital Trigger 2, I might add. So we're getting a lot of sample replacement there, which is inherently unnatural. So bringing up the tails of those instruments makes it sound a lot more natural. I like that. That's good. Let's take a listen to guitars, because drums are phenomenally important in a mix, but if you've not got a great guitar sound in a heavy rock or metal track, you've got no track. Let's take a listen to that now. I want to try something slightly different with the guitars. One way that I love to use a multi-band compressor or sometimes dynamic EQ on guitars is to make them get out the way of a vocal. So you can compress just the mid-range or the high-end or something like that, but externally sidechain in the vocal so that it only gets out when the sidechain signal is present. You can do that in MOTT, and I want to take a look at that now. So the preset that I've got loaded is Guitar Airy, and this is, I don't know, it's kind of cool as it is. If I just play it off and then on, it's doing something interesting to the frequency content of that guitar. So it's kind of taking the high mids of the guitar and sort of shifting them down a little bit through some multi-band brilliance. I think that's going to be quite interesting and quite helpful when we've got the vocal in there, because the vocal is sitting in that sort of 3K area, which this guitar has quite a lot of, but MOTT is moving that mid-range kind of down a bit. So I think that's going to help it get out the way of the vocals. So we can bring in an external sidechain very simply in this. I'm going to bring it in this instance for all of the bands and just see how that sounds. You can do it on a band by band basis, but just for now, let's do it on all of them. And interestingly, this gets rid of the upwards compression and the expansion. Yeah, I can see why they've done that, because it's not really of much use. You don't necessarily want to. I don't know. Do you want to? Sometimes that could be cool to upwardly expand something when something else is present. There must be a reason for that. I must look it up. Now, something that I like with plugins is to be able to get to the user manual easily. And I couldn't initially see it. I went on the website and it said you can get it in your applications folder, and that's kind of handy. It didn't have it online that I could see at the time of filming this, but I did eventually find it. If you go to your Slate Digital icon there, it's just in your user guide there, and you can open it up and you can have a look. I find it really helpful to have the manual, especially on a new plugin, because I've got the tooltips, and I can't get rid of this now. There we go. I've got the tooltips, which you can click on up here, and then you can hover over something and it tells you what it does and how to affect the sound. But just having the manual there is a really useful feature. And I like that, especially in new plugins where I'm not entirely sure what does what at first time of looking. Anyway, I digress. So let's take a listen to this on a guitar when a vocal is present in the sidechain. So the sidechain, I'm just going to go to my vocal bus, and I want to hear what this is doing. I'm going to listen to it in the mix, and I think that this is just going to allow me to get the guitar out of the way of the vocal for a short moment, and then let the vocal pop through again. At least that's what I think, because this is moving the mid-range. Let's take a listen and see if that is actually the case. Let's start with it off.
Oh, it takes a man to know when something's done. I come to you like I'm the only one.
Yeah, so it is, but it's adding loads of level. So I'm going to bring down the output gain just a little bit. Let's see if we can just level this a bit. Let's go guitar solo and just take a listen before and after and get this level about right. And I've got it right there. Brilliant. Let's take a listen again and just see if this is doing what I think it is. It sounded like it was. It sounded like it was kind of shifting the EQ of it, but because it was so loud, it was hard to tell. Let's start with it off and see if that is indeed the case.
Oh, it takes a man to know when something's done. I come to you like I'm the only one. They come and go.
Yeah, it is. That's super cool. So it's kind of EQing it at the same time, and it's adding an EQ that's only present when it's not just getting rid of that band, it's then re-EQing it for when something is present in the external sidechain, which is wicked, but it's doing a bit too much. So we can go over to this amount control, and as the handy tooltip says, it adjusts how much compression is applied to all the bands. I'm going to take this down a little bit. Let's take it down to like 70%, or as close as I can get. Just see if that's, because it was a bit too much before. It was just kind of applying too much. Let's see if that is a little bit better.
Oh, it takes a man to know when something's done. I come to you like I'm the only one. They come and go. Life is not a one-act show. It's not over till I'm done.
Yeah, it's doing that, and it's doing it really nicely. It's getting out the way. I kind of feel like the attack on it is a little bit fast, though. What am I at? 100 milliseconds, 30 milliseconds, and 24. Okay, so that would make sense because the high and the mid-range bands are a lot higher than the low end, and I want to be able to adjust those. So I'm going to make those a little bit slower, say a little bit, like 10 times as slow, and just see, because it feels like the vocal is kind of popping out massively there, relative to the guitar, which is not what I want. Let's see if that's changed things.
Oh, it takes a man to know when something's done.
Yeah, far more subtle and far more usable and really nice. Oh, I kind of didn't want to like this plugin. That's the problem. I kind of looked at it, as I said, as just a EDM, hip hop, whatever you want to call that genre of music thing. But it's not. It's really good. And it's actually really subtle. When you think of OTT, it's over the top. And MOTT, is that like more over the top, presumably? But it's not. It can actually be really subtle. And I like that. Well done. That is cool. Let's try it on some vocals and just see how it's affecting those. So for vocals, I've just opened it up. First of all, let's try the classic mode. Let's just click Vox. Let's just see what it does before we go too much into it. So it's obviously affecting the mid-range and the high end quite a large amount. Let's solo those vocals. Let's just see exactly what it's doing before and after. This is just literally pressing Vox and seeing what happens. Let's go for it.
Oh, it takes a man to know when something's done. I clung to you like I'm the only one. They come and go, but life is not a one-act show. It's not over till I'm done.
Compressy, very compressy. Okay, there's quite a lot of spill there. When I've recorded these vocals, I've just been sitting with the SM7 with the music coming out of the speakers. So that could be an issue. Okay, let's go to advanced. Let's see what's actually going on here. Let's take a look at it in terms of this, because I think it's compressing the mid-range a bit too much, and I'm hearing a lot of that spill in the kind of mid-range and high end. So let's see if we can kind of limit that a little bit. I don't mean limiting, I mean stop it compressing quite so much. Sort of the opposite of limiting. Words.
Oh, it takes a man to know when something's done. I clung to you like I'm the only one. They come and go, but life is not a one-act show. It's not over till I'm done.
Okay, so to counteract all that compression that's going on, it's clearly adding quite a lot to the high end and to the mid-range. Let's just bring those down a little bit and just see how it's actually shaping it. Because I kind of like the tone of it, but I feel like it's just a little bit too much at the moment. We can have a look at the amount control, yeah, but let's just see what we can do by just kind of bringing down the bands a little bit.
Oh, it takes a man to know when something's done. I clung to you like I'm the only one. They come and go.
That's interesting. It's not actually affecting the tone of the vocal. Now I've brought those down, or in a very small way, but it's just making it a bit more dynamic. It's making kind of the consonants of the words come out just a little bit more. Let's take a listen to that in the mix and see how that's affecting stuff. That's really interesting, because it's just acting like almost like an expander there, I guess, but I'm not actually. I'm in expansion in the low end, but I've taken that out. So it's kind of acting like an expander, but I don't know. Let's take down this upward compression, because I don't feel like that's going to be useful. I think that is indeed what's bringing all that spill up. Let's take a listen to it solo just once more and see if that's kind of solved that.
Oh, it takes a man to know when something's done. I clung to you like I'm the only one. They come and go, but life is not a one-act show.
That's really helped there. That's meant that the spill is kind of effectively gone, or as present as it was before. So it's not adding any more. Let's take a listen to it in the mix and just see what it's doing, because that's interesting. I want to hear if it becomes a bit more dynamic on those consonants. I think it's going to.
Oh, it takes a man to know when something's done. I clung to you like I'm the only one. They come and go. Life is not a one-act show. It's not over till I'm done.
That's wicked. That's just helping it punch through the mix so much better. Yeah, there's a level issue there, but on a frequency basis, not just on a dynamic volume kind of basis, it's really helping it. Let's just tone it down just a touch, just to see if it if it's any less noticeable when it's not quite as loud. I love it. I think that's really cool. And that's simple as well. I've not actually done that much to it. I've just taken off the upwards compression, essentially, and rebalanced like the frequency content of it. Nice.
Oh, it takes a man to know when something's done. I come to you like I'm the only one to come and go.
Yeah, it's just adding a little bit of punch to those transients of the consonants. I think I liked it before. I think I liked it with a little more kind of top end in it. That's interesting though. It's kind of just acting as like a shaper for the vocal transients. That's really cool. I like this. This is good. So there you have it then. MOTT. I initially thought it was going to be a bit weird trying to use it on different instruments. I thought it was going to be just a hip-hop thing or a EDM thing or something that... I don't use Ableton because I don't need the features that it has. Supposedly it's like unbelievable for that kind of music, and I'm sure it is, but I don't make that kind of music, so I'm not really very fluent in it. So I kind of just assumed that it was going to be made for those kind of genres and just wrote it off. And I'm really glad I didn't write it off completely. I'm glad I actually downloaded it and tried it because this is amazing. I love it. Have you tried it on any kind of genres that aren't EDM hip hop kind of thing? And have you had much success? Because this is really, really interesting. On a bus level, I kind of feel like this is going to be cool on individual instruments as well, though. That upwards compression, especially if you want to bring up the tail of drums. I'm going to try that. I'm going to take a look at that and see how I get on. Hope you've enjoyed the video. I hope it's been useful for you. Make sure you check out the rest of the channel, and I'll see you again soon. Thanks a lot. Take care.